one of the things I do feel that business owners do tend to do is they're quite, not all of them, but if you're all about yourself and only getting yourself to the top and not your team, that's when you hit a massive like plateau, because your team are the people that are going to help you build yourself and themselves together. So the mindset should change.
Before we begin the podcast, have you gotten your free ebook? It's called the Build a Six-Figure Portfolio Guidebook. Now, inside it, we share with you the tips and tricks to bring your stock investing skills to the next level. The best part, it's only 10 pages long and it's totally free. Whether you're on Spotify or YouTube, the link to download is in the description, or you can go to www.firl.co/free or www.firl.co/free. All right, guys, welcome back to this podcast. And we usually do investing content, but I think this one will be very unique, very special, because it gives you insight into a new kind of, or at least to me, a new kind of business model, definitely for the future. And for those who are unaware, our guest today is actually a cousin of mine. Do you prefer to be called Pei or Pei Xiang? Which one?
Pei.
Pei. All right. Yeah. So actually, in a way, like, this Zoom session is not just a podcast; it's a catch up between both of us. Because we've not chatted for ages, right?
Yeah,
and it's really a catch up about. Yeah, and the reason why I decided to bring you on the podcast is because I just saw the journey of what you've done with PB Physio, and I thought that, among other things, how you've managed to build a business out of it. And there's this whole thing about businesses struggling during the pandemic. And what I saw just from the outside, without talking to, your family members to ask for updates, I could see that tremendous growth, right? So I'm very interested to learn about that story. And just to start off, right, maybe you can just introduce yourself and also explain how did you turn what you were passionate in, which is physio, into a business.
All right. So my name is Pei Gan, or Pei Physio. I'm a physiotherapist, and I'm also a powerlifter. So I'm a competitive powerlifter. So I started my business, PB Physio, because when I was working as a physiotherapist in a different company and competing in powerlifting, I was heading up to my first competition. And I had hurt my back, and I couldn't compete. But I wanted to make the national championships. So you had to make a qualifying number to make the national championships. And so what I did, I had 10 days, and I went to the doctor. This is not advisable. I went to the doctor, asked them for a painkillers. I could not lift more than 30 kilos, but I needed obviously more than 30 kilos to make the qualifying number.
Right.
And then I went and competed, and I made it, but I couldn't get back to training and lifting more than 30 kilos after that. And what happened was, I was like, that's weird. I'm a physio and I can treat people with back injuries and disc injuries, but why can't I can get them back to their normal lives, but why can't I do that with my sport? Then I realized that most people only lift up to 20 kilos, which I could do, but 30 kilos and beyond I couldn't do. So I found basically a niche in the market, and I was like, if I'm struggling with this and I don't want to quit, I'm pretty sure there are a lot of other athletes struggling with this in different sport as well as mine. Because back then in powerlifting, if you get a back injury or disc injury, you basically quit. Right. Yeah, so then I started really obsessing over it, because there are people that told me to stop, and they're trying to be nice, but people that told me to stop people had told me to quit. Someone told me what would a good physio do, and that really fired me up. So I went and obsessed over it, learned how to treat it, got a name in treating strength athletes and lifters back to the platform, competition platform. And then currently, fast forward, I decided to start a company to treat athletes because I'm an athlete myself. I do not want to stop competing, or I don't want someone to feel the same thing I felt not being able to compete for a year. And then so fast forward as well in my career as a competitive powerlifter, I went to the World Championships in June and represented Australia. So I basically took two passions, my obsession for powerlifting and my obsession for physio, and I combined it and I made it a company.
So just to clarify, when you mentioned niche just now, right? So specifically it's for recovering athletes. Am I right to say that?
The first niche I found was pretty much in powerlifting itself. I was like, okay, there's not many physios that know how to treat someone back to pre-injury standards or competition standards after injury. Because I couldn't find many. I couldn't find any, and I found probably one. And then the next niche, as companies started growing, I realized, hey, this isn't like every sport, because a lot of different sports started coming to see me. And I was like, okay, this isn't every sport, and most of the people I feel in that occupation in physio, they could be for sports physios, but they themselves aren't athletes.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, that's another niche in itself, because I can feel what most people feel, like what these athletes feel, and most physios can't. And most physios have this perception that it takes quite a long time to rehab, or quite like once you get an injury, it's like just management. But I believe that's not true. I believe you can actually rehab 99% of injuries. The only reason why I'm saying 99% is because I'm happy to be proven wrong for that 1%. I'm open to that, but I really don't think that's, I really don't think that's the case.
I'll get into maybe we can get into the science of rehab a little bit later on, but I want to peel back and go back to, I think it's one thing to like be really passionate about something and then identify that, there's this niche or there's this hole in the market that you can fill. But of course, starting out and then branching out and doing something your own is not necessarily it's not the first thing people think about. And there's always a lot of self-doubt and also other people outside saying you can't do it. So what was it like in the early days when you're starting out the business, getting your name out and, I just want to get a sense.
So when I first started, I was working for a different company and I was just really getting my name out as a physio that treats powerlifters, Olympic weightlifters. And a lot of people had told me that, there's no money in that sport, so no one will come see you. And that just drove me. So I have this thing where people tell me I can't do something, and it just drives me even more to do it, just to prove them wrong. So, so that's how I started growing my name. And through Instagram, through social media, I just put out what I'm doing there and just slowly just learn about social media. And whoever that sees me that wants to come see me, they'll contact me. And that's how I started it. Then I realized that I wanted to start a company, and I realized that the company I was at was not conducive to what I wanted, to the same goals. So what I did was they wanted to basically give me a separate company and open up a practice for me. And then they also offered me like a really huge promotion. And they also offered to pay for my Masters of Sports Physio. But I realized that I couldn't do it with that company for a few reasons. And so I decided to and this is not like what I'm saying now, obviously it's very scary, because at that time I don't know if I was going to succeed or fail, but I might as well have tried. Yeah, like if I don't try, I don't know. So what I did was I quit Masters of Sports Physio because I didn't see the point of getting a degree at that time for someone like people that were just treating but not really knowing how an athlete feels. And at the same time of that, I quit my job and I turned down the promotion. The promotion was to be business development across the whole company, like 3 practices, and also as a physio, and start a company. So I turned that all down. I quit. I had my savings and I just did it. I was like, well, fuck it. If this doesn't work, then I'll find another job. But if it works, it'll be great.
Right. And then, I always like to figure out those around you, right? What would you gauge the support level was, with the people around you, your then boyfriend, now husband, right? And things like that, friends, family. So
I would say the 2 biggest people that really, really supported it was my husband and boyfriend at the time. He just believed that it will succeed. Like, he didn't have any doubt. And then I also had a friend that actually currently works with us in PB Physio. And she was like, no, go get it. Like, I'm very sure you'll succeed. So those 2 people really believed in me, which then made me realize if 2 people believe in you so much, then you need to start believing yourself a bit more. So that's one of the 2 drivers. And then obviously there are going to be naysayers. There are going to be people that say, no, you can't do it. And it's more, I guess, it's not because it's their projection of themselves to you versus them thinking of you per se that can't do it. So that just drives me. That just goes, I'm going to prove you wrong, man. And I remember calling my parents up and telling them this as well. And by that time, I did have a reputation in lifting. So, I told them, and then they said, you know what, if you really want to do this, then just do it. So I did. And then I actually flew back to Malaysia for my grandma's 80th. So after I quit and I was looking for a location, I actually signed the location while I was in Malaysia attending my grandma's 80th. So but
the location is in Australia.
In Australia, yeah. Right, so I signed it in probably under a month. I found a place, probably 3 weeks actually. So
what was the game plan? Because I'm not sure whether this was running through your head, but the physio industry is not a new industry. So you going into as someone totally new, right? What was the game plan for you to really, are you someone who plans out the steps ahead, or you kind of just feel?
I do both. So you obviously have to plan and you have to have a big picture, but at the same time, all your steps, your small steps to hit to the big picture probably will never perfectly go to plan. Yeah. So the way we were going to differentiate ourselves was, one, I was pretty big on social media in the sense that I didn't have 80,000 followers, but at that time I probably had 6,000 followers, but I was converting a lot of them. And then the game plan was pretty much to differentiate ourselves by having the mission statement of stopping athletes retiring due to injury. Right. And differentiating ourselves by most physio practices just treat general population and do not know how to treat sport. And that's how we differentiated ourselves. We do still see general population, but we treat them more like we treat athletes and we found that their recovery is actually a lot faster as well. So that's pretty much how we grew ourselves, through social media. At the same time, while I was building the business at the start, I actually was competing in the under 47 kilo weight class. Right. So I had to cut. I messed up my cut because I was busy moving the equipment, and I had to lose 2.7 kilos in 13 hours. 13 hours, wow. Yeah, so I was doing that, and then I was starting the business, and I was doing the social media, and then just going business development, talking to a whole bunch of different people, and I was treating at the same time from different locations before the primary location was built. Right. Oh, so back then there wasn't like a centralized area where your clients would go there. You actually had to go to where they were to treat them. Am I right to say that? No, I was treating out 3 gyms, while that centralized area was being built. That centralized area took about 2 more weeks to be built, but while I was waiting for that to be built, I was treating at different gyms because I had basically connections to different gyms. So yeah, I was trading out of them and paying them rent. And then the moment mine opened, I still traded out a few of the gyms, but the Marrickville became the central hub. And then our books were full when we started.
Awesome. So,
Yeah.
one thing you mentioned very interesting just now, and is one of the big advantages you have, and then, subsequently your team has, is the fact that you know how an athlete feels. And that's really important even from a business perspective, because that you're able to relate to your clients a lot more. And of course, the net results is that they're going to start recommending other people, and perhaps you can charge higher and things like that. But why was it important that you could know how they felt versus someone else who knows the science as good as you do, or maybe even better?
Okay, so I'll actually answer that in 2 ways. There's one, that athlete mentality actually has helped me through business a lot.
Okay.
And in the business world, that athlete mentality, I brought across the athlete mentality to the business world, and that has helped me push boundaries of things that people give up on very quickly.
Okay.
2, when you have when you feel what when you feel what the client feels, when someone comes to you and they go, oh, when I get under the low bar squat, my shoulder starts feeling numb. And a lot of times, most people will be like most physios, I have no idea what a low bar squat is. Secondly, I don't know why your shoulder will feel numb. Right? If I start feeling that, I would obsess about it a lot more, and I'll put my science knowledge into it plus my practical knowledge, and I can combine it because I understand how it feels. And it's not just about getting under the bar. When you head for a competition, there's all these mental things that you need to work on. You're putting so much more load. There's fatigue that needs to build up. There's just a lot of combination of things that people don't really understand unless you feel it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's actually very true, because it's one thing to just read something online to figure out why my shoulder is painful versus actually talking to someone who probably felt it before, done it before, and actually came out with unique solutions. They can't really find it in the textbook, right?
I'm also going to say the things that you read in books or the things that you read in studies, especially studies,
right?
It takes about don't quote me, but 6 to 10 years before a study actually comes out and is published, when people are already doing it in the field.
Right.
So a lot of times it's quite outdated. But that does not mean that studies aren't good. It just means that, okay, so currently for me, a lot of people have asked me, hey, why wouldn't you go back to uni and do a study or get a PhD? And so you can get a study published. Why would I do that and get a study published if I earn this much getting a study published and I earn this much now? It doesn't make sense. And also I hate just sitting at a desk and trying to, do you know what I mean?
I mean, you're better off getting someone to film a documentary of what you guys have been doing. And I think that in and of itself is that's probably more productive.
Yeah. Well, most people in the field, or most people in the practical part of it, don't really want to go back to an academic and start writing papers. It's not very fun because it's like telling telling the military, hey, would you rather play a video game of shooting, of defending your country, or would you rather defend your country?
Wow. That's an interesting analogy, but I agree with that sentiment for sure. But you going back to the athlete mindset that you mentioned and how that actually helped you break boundaries. Give me a sense of what that mindset is, and also what were the boundaries being broken down by you and your team?
There are a few. So in terms of the athlete mindset, there are things that you need to learn. You need to learn when to pull back, but you also need to know when to keep going even though you're in pain.
Okay.
So keep going, even though you're in pain, even though your body feels like it's been battered, and even though like everything is saying to stop. That helps a lot in business, especially when you first start off in a company. Like I had like 4 hours sleep a night, and I was doing like, I don't even know how many different things I was doing. I was constantly doing it. I was barely sleeping. If you look at my car, it's so scratched up because I've hit it multiple times when I first started the company. And that mindset of like, no, you can go one more day or one more step. That really helps, because that's what happens when you hit comp and you have like, 150 kilos on the bar and you have to keep lifting it although you're so tired. Although your body feels like crap. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So that really helps through that. I feel like in the industry, I guess as well, that there is a bit more, it is more male dominated in.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
It's more male dominated in the sport that I am in sports physio itself, and in business ownership itself. So you're treated a little bit differently, but really? that's just society, right? Society's norms are like that, and you just have to take it on the chin and keep going. And that's pretty much in competition. Like, a whole bunch of shit happens in competition. When I was in the under 47 kilo weight class, there was talcum powder on the floor, and I pulled and tried to win the goal, and I slipped and fell.
I remember this. You were also talking about how you were recovering from that as well, right? On social media.
Yeah, because I was hoping to go to the World Championships. And crap like that happens all the time. It's no one's fault, right? It's just shit happens and you have to deal with it. So that has really helped me. And it just helps when if someone can relate to you, if you can relate to someone and someone really understands you, you're more inclined to want to, be treated by them, because, they understand what you feel.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, one thing I remember was that you really, in your industry, obviously the pandemic was huge, right? And I still remember that it was during the pandemic that the Olympics happened.
Yeah.
And I recall you had Olympians, right, as some of your clients. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yes.
Yeah. So share with me that journey, because it's one thing to, treat ordinary people like me. Another is to actually have clients who actually are in the Olympics during the pandemic, when you can't physically be there helping them, right?
Yeah. So what happened during the pandemic, we had a lockdown. So in terms of in the physio world, there were comments and people were freaking out. Like, business owners are going insane because they're like, how am I going to sustain my clientele? How am I going to sustain my employees? So during the pandemic, I actually was the year before, I was practicing treating different strength athletes, because there's this powerlifter that held the world record in squat, and he was not in Sydney, he was in Melbourne, and he had just asked, like, would you see me online? And I'm like, why not? Yeah. I do it with my friends anyway, so I tried doing that. And so that actually equipped me really well for the pandemic, because when the pandemic hit, I was like, okay, what are we going to do? Because we have all these employees to pay. No one's coming in. There were physio owners.
And how big was the team back then? Sorry, how big was your team back then when the pandemic hit?
Probably like, how many were? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, about 6 people, 5 people. Yeah. And so physios were talking about how their occupation would be obsolete, because, we didn't know what was going to happen next. Right. Yeah. So our job is going to be gone. We're not going to be. So what I started thinking about, I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this? Because I still have to pay people, and every physio at that time was being like let go and fired in different practices. So I don't know, I was just sitting there. I had this idea that hey, if I know how to treat people online, what I can do, one, I can show my whole team how to do it. One other physio was already doing it with me, and I can teach them how to do it. Two, if I teach everyone out there how to do it, one, I will save physios and help them keep their jobs by doing online consults. Two, if I show it to social media and I put it out there by teaching them, then people will see, if I'm the teacher, therefore I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So, therefore, if I need physio currently and I can't leave the house, the first person I'm going to is the teacher. So, one, we help the community as a whole on how to treat if they watch our videos. Two, we helped ourselves as a company, because then people started going, cool, like, let's try it. Three, the third thing you needed to do is you needed to be able to sell it to people and convince people that
it works,
that it works over me touching you. And that was actually another, like, we actually had to talk to people and teach our staff how to talk to them as well, and to try it out, and to talk to clients to try it out, and they did.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started, and it started going all over, like, nationwide to, like, different states in Australia. And then it started, now we've seen about 26 different countries online.
Amazing.
So countries like Iceland, I was like, okay, I don't know how you found me, but fair enough. We have like Saudi Arabia, stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. Are you getting any athletes from the World Cup right now, because it's happening? Just that's going out there.
I don't actually see too many team sport. I see a lot of individual sport.
Right.
Yeah. I just see some team sport, but I see a lot of, like, fight, strength sport, stuff like that. Yeah.
So as far as the effectiveness of the advice and the service and the treatment, right, was in comparison between what you would do physically and also the online stuff, how you measure both of them up, in terms of getting results for your clients?
So we have a system of how to measure the joint ranges, but then whatever the person says that's aggravating them. So let's say you tell me my squat at 100 kilos is hurting me. Okay. And I'll get you to squat 100 kilos. I will treat you, and then I'll get you to squat 100 kilos again. If the pain's gone, that's pretty much a result, right? And then educating them on how to keep doing this over and over again, because you can actually influence pain in one session quite easily. It's keeping it there.
Influence pain. Sorry, what do you mean?
So you can get rid of pain in one session quite easily. If someone has the capabilities to be able to understand what you're doing, be able to feel the right muscles that you want them to do, which most people are like, how's that happen? I'm like, it does. But the way to get rid of it completely, you have to practice the same movement over and over again until your brain has become subconsciously competent at it. So
it's like retraining like habits now, right? Because
it's pretty much retraining habits, muscular patterns and retraining habits. So I've gotten like people to competition that can't bend, like literally comes in the clinic, cannot bend, cannot touch your toes, 4 days on the platform lifting 300 kilos.
Amazing.
Or I've had an ice skater that was scary, because the ice skater, I've never treated an ice skater. She comes in and she goes, I was skating this way, my knee went the other way, and now I can't walk. And I have, what was it? It was 13 days to the national championships to qualify for the world championships in synchronized ice skating. So her team is actually relying on her as well.
Wow.
And she won.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Of all like the different types of sports athletes that you treat, which one are, I'm not even sure how to ask this question now, which one are the most difficult or unique types, because certain sports, like powerlifting, there's a lot more, like there's no sudden movements, right? Like let's say like ice skating, there's a lot of agility involved and things like that. What would you say is like the most unique type of athletes to treat?
That's quite a hard question, because it depends on the person. it's more the person than anything.
A person,
because in
okay.
in powerlifting, your third attempt is something you've never done before, or usually something you've never done before. So it actually, you'll always go out of form. So those like fast movements or whatever, those movements that you don't account for, that can happen in powerlifting. Because, you know, you lose the bar, then it's going to come crashing down. Hopefully you have spotters, but yeah, there's risk of injury. And then changing directions as well, risk of injuries in a different sport. Someone colliding with you, or, you know, fight, MMA and jiu-jitsu, a lot of different injuries as well. It really depends on the person and how you can mentally teach that person. If that person has enough mental strength to be able to keep going as well, and how you can slowly build a mental and physical, it can work really well, especially with the pressure of, oh my gosh, I have the Olympics in a few days. Like, yeah, that pressure actually increases your, when you have anxiety, you have more stress. When you have more stress, you have more pain, right?
That's really true. And like, but what are the, so that's maybe on the elite level, right? But maybe your more ordinary clients, what are some of the things that they tell themselves that you would say it's a self-created, it's a self-sabotage? What are some of the things that people like to lies essentially tell themselves?
I guess to them it's the truth, because they've not been educated enough. But they would say like, oh, I will never be able to bend my knees again. Like, it's the most ridiculous things. I can't squat again. I'm like, you go to the toilet and you squat every day. What do you mean you can't squat? Like, just like, oh, bone on bone. This is something I have genetically and it will never change. So just things like, or things that people actually have told them, like surgeons have told them. I've had a Gen Pop dancer, little like dance in her spare time. She was Italian. She was told by Italian surgeon that she should never bend again.
That's crazy, right? I mean, you would think that these are the guys that are there to improve you and heal you, and here they are saying, no, it
just depends on the person. Sometimes the surgeon might have these different beliefs, or sometimes the person can misinterpret what a health professional says as well. You know, it can be both ways. There are some health professionals that go, no, you can't do this again. And that's a bit more of an old school kind of thinking. But, you know, they're not doing it to harm them. They're trying their best in what they think they're doing, but it could be the wrong advice.
Okay. Now, this next question, I think this would be a lot more relevant to people who want to do what you're doing, who perhaps they're already in the field, they're maybe a personal trainer or a physiotherapist or whatever, and they want to, you know, they look at what you're doing and they think, you know what, that's something I like to do. One of the big challenges for a lot of, let's call it solopreneurs, right, is building a team. And they want a certain profile of their trainers and certain way of doing things. And for yourself, right, how do you create a standardization for, you know, in terms of protocols, in terms of service quality, especially when you've got a team of, you know, very different people, different personalities, different background. Some people came from the fighting background, you came from the powerlifting background. And so every personal trainer or physio has their own story. But how do you create something more standardized, a company essentially of these individuals?
So what I usually do is when I interview people, I want to make sure that they have the same values as I do.
Okay.
So, and the three main values that the company has is strength, honor, and progression. If you fit those three, and I see that you're open to learning, I don't care what your results are in uni. I don't care about anything as long as you have those three and you can practice. I'm happy to take you on board, regardless of what sport, whatever your sport is or your passion is. I know I can help you get there, because I know I can help show people how to break into different industries of different sports. Yeah. So but we are actually very, very big on writing systems and protocols. So simple systems, things that people say, oh, why doesn't this person know this? It's common sense. It's not common sense. You got to write it. It has to be a system. So
that's true.
Any kind of hole that I see in the company or any kind of mistake that I see in the company that we made, I'm like, all right, plug it and write a system, make sure it's constantly being used, right? If the system is, or one of the things that we had to learn is that when we started the company, you have to pivot and pivot and pivot. And through COVID, you have to do all these pivots, right?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you get so used to pivoting that it becomes a habit. And then you have to break the habit because you're like, why do you keep pivoting when we have systems that we need to follow now? Stop trying to break it now, right? So having people on board that you can work together with, and that can understand you. One of the things I do feel that business owners do tend to do is they're quite, not all of them, but if you're all about yourself and only getting yourself to the top and not your team, that's when you hit a massive like plateau, because your team are the people that are going to help you build yourself and themselves together. So the mindset should change to, how do I grow people and help them grow with me versus how do I just grow myself? You just grow yourself, you're not going to get anywhere. You're just going to be a sole trader. Like, what's going to happen? You can't expand. You only have 24 hours in a day versus if you have a team of 10, you have 240 hours.
Yeah. I mean, simple math. Math. But in terms of what are the how do I put this question? You mentioned just now there's three, right? Strength, honor, and progression. So you want to go into depth into these three, let's call it pillars, right? Of the way you look at things, and why are these three the key things you feel?
One strength would be mental strength, not just physical.
Yep.
And for the occupation and for the company you're at, you probably should have some physical strength. And I mean that as in, if you're doing a sport and you're treating people, I think you should be doing a sport yourself. And then mental strength, that is huge. The questions we ask in interviews, we ask a lot of personality questions of what you've overcome. And then if you've not overcome anything or you can't answer it, then I'm like, progression, I'm like really obsessive with always progressing daily at something. And if the team has that, we can progress together. If someone just wants to coast, then they're not the person for me, for my company. And honor is just being honorable in what you're doing, trying your best. That doesn't mean not failing. That means trying your best at that time that you think is right, and being very transparent to people about it. If you don't know, you can say you don't know. If you fail, own up to your failures, but learn. Yeah.
So the part about what I find interesting is the part about when you ask them what they've overcome. And what are you typically looking for? Like, do you say, well, what have you overcome perhaps in the world of physio, or maybe like yourself going through?
It's pretty much anything.
Anything.
It doesn't have to be physio. It can be anything. I'm trying to look at the way you think and how you thought about your difficult situation and how you basically took steps to do something about it versus just like, oh, my life sucks.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But do you think that the fact that you're on social media and people know who you are and what you're about, that kind of self-selects, right, for the kind of people that we interview? They're kind of like, yeah, you know what? I think if I'm going to apply for this company, I cannot be saying life sucks. I don't know whether that's your experience.
It depends, though.
It really depends. Because
sometimes they don't even realize they're saying it in different ways. We are like ask pretty abstract questions as well. I'll ask that, but also ask like, do you know how Google interviews?
I think I've read articles. I'm more familiar with how I think Peter Thiel interviews, but yeah, maybe you share with me the Google one.
Yeah, Google asks you abstract questions that are just super random. Google will ask you, if you want to take your dog to work, but your dog, like your workmates are allergic to dogs, how would you do it?
Your workmates, is it allergic to dogs? I see. Okay.
So they'll ask you like really random questions like that. And they just are trying to see how you, under pressure and such a weird question, how you navigate yourself through it, and how one of the things I really look for is if someone gives up on the question. If they give up on the question, I'm like,
if someone what on the question, sorry?
Gives up on the question. They're like, I don't know, I can't answer, and they just keep trying to find that out with no real answer. That's when I'm like, I'm pretty sure you'll do that with everything else.
Fair enough. You know what? Yeah. I should do that as well for the interviews we do now. Great tip. So I mean, we're coming towards the end, and I wanna maybe you can summarize, running a business, right? Specifically in your industry, what are the top lessons that you would give the listeners? Like, yeah.
Running a business in any industry, I would say, fail fast. Mm-hmm. Be okay with failing. If you're not failing, you're not doing it right. Like, you have to fail to learn. Or if you're not failing, then you need to do some self-reflection, because I'm pretty sure you are. But be able to pivot from failing really quickly. Nothing needs to be perfect. Do not aim for perfection. Aim for what can I get done immediately, and then how can I fix it if it's not perfect to make it perfect. And the third thing, I think you have to have a lot of grit. Mm-hmm. So being okay with people like slamming doors at you in your face, being okay with taking a competition, just saying stuff about you, but just going ahead anyway and constantly going. Because no matter how much you fail, or even if you do get some sort of, bad press or whatever, if you keep going, in like a year's time, no one even remembers.
Actually, that's very, very true. How short people's memories are.
Yeah, it's the only person that remembers is yourself, because you are so obsessed with yourself, right? Because your whole world revolves around yourself. Yeah. The next day, no one will remember. Like, literally.
Yeah. I think I have nothing to add there. I think that's very true. So, just to add, right, I know you're a big fan of progress. What's the future like, right, for PB? You guys have exponentially grown, right, especially during the pandemic. But what do you hope to see, right, moving forward? What do you would like to add to what you already have?
So the main goal this 5 years has been to build a whole bunch of leaders and build a whole bunch of physios that are really good. The next step is to basically spread the message, that your body is like a lot more capable than it is, to stop athletes retiring due to injury. We're going to start opening up different practices in different locations and building from there. If I can get it, I want 10 locations in. And
you guys are at how many right now?
We have one HQ and we're at 2 other locations. So we have 3 at the moment. I want 10. And I want to grow, I want to educate the masses on the physical capabilities of someone's body.
That's what a goal. So, but how about
and at the same time, I want to still keep competing in powerlifting, and eventually one day I want to go back to the World Championships again. Yeah,
man, I'm looking forward to that day. But how about internationally? Do you intend to like all these plans, does it really matter that it has to be in Australia? Or
No, it doesn't have to be in Australia.
right.
Yeah, because we currently have different. We currently have. I'm wondering if I could say this on, but once you put this on, I'll probably will have that person already. We currently have people from different countries applying to our company. So we have currently in January when we start, we have someone from New Zealand moving to Australia to work with us. We have an American wanting to work with us and move to Australia to work with us. So could be in different countries.
You know what? Thank you so much for spending the time with me. This has been an enlightening podcast. I know I have a lot of friends in the personal training space who, in fact, I did ask a couple of them what questions they would ask, and they're also looking to break into doing what you're doing. And when will you be back in Malaysia? Or if
I'm actually back on Christmas Day.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry for asking. I remember now. All right, man. Pei, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome.
And guys, hope you enjoyed this very different podcast. Thought I'd bring something different to you guys, beyond the usual investing content. And as usual, like, comment, subscribe, usual stuff. Follow us on Spotify. And guys, we'll see you in the next pod.